We got Joe DeLeone in the house to talk some NFL draft, baby. All right, welcome back to the Onebar and Lupagus show. I'm Onebar with Lupagus and special guest Joe DeLeone, draft analyst for Bleav Network. Fantastic to have you, man. Excited to talk some draft.
Yeah, I'm juiced up. We've got the combine right around the corner, and as I've been saying on all my guest spots this week, it's like Christmas time for 3 straight months for me. I'm like a kid in the candy shop, being able to talk about all these prospects and to see the future faces of the NFL. It gets me excited, gets me juiced up, and so excited to see what the Vikings do as well.
Yeah, we're in the same boat.
Yes. Hopefully, you're going to give us some hope on some of these players that are linked to the Vikings, or you're going to dash our dreams. Joe's links will be down in the description. Check him out. Not blowing smoke up his ass. Him and Ryan, I love their show. They talk draft. I ran into it a couple months ago, so I reached out to Joe. I'm like, you got to come on the show, and he instantly said yes. Great day. So we're happy to have you.
I appreciate the kind words. It means a lot that you enjoy the show. And me and Ryan try to keep it as informal, but also educational as possible. So I love to hear that you guys are fans of the show.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Check it out. Absolutely. And we're the kings of informal. Sometimes Lupagus doesn't even have clothing on. So you're
depends how the game goes.
Wait, why not this show?
Well, you can't see my waist down.
Show's not over yet. Show's not over. All right, let's go. Let's jump into it. Coming out last couple of weeks, I want your thoughts. Saying that this draft class, at least when it comes to the first round, is like 14, 15 players deep. Vikings picking 23. That's very depressing news. Are you buying into that? Is this draft class actually only that deep with first round talent?
Yeah, to put some context on that, when we say it's only that deep, all that means is that those 15 guys are those worthy of being selected highly in the draft. And then afterwards, there's a wide array of options. And it's a lot of guys that in most drafts probably are going to get selected somewhere on day 2. And I think there's going to be a massive shuffling based on what teams are prioritizing for specific position groups. So I think with all these guys that I have graded as second round corners, for example, I think there could be a long run of corners that go in the back half of the first round. But to put added context to this, most draft classes don't have 32 first round grades. It's just not realistic. There's not that many elite talented players in every single draft class. It's usually in this 15 player range. But I think that despite that, for the Minnesota Vikings, there's still going to be great options. There's still going to be guys that you can get that can step in and start right away. Just because they're not graded as first rounders doesn't mean that you don't have future Pro Bowlers, future All-Pro players that are on the horizon in the back end of the first round.
All right. Well, and to kind of piggyback off that, so what are some strengths of this draft class? What are some weaknesses, some positions that are stronger or deeper than others?
Yeah, I think that the main one is along the entire defensive line. That has to be the deepest group out of any. And we're talking defensive tackle and at edge. We look at the 2 premier guys at the top with Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, and they're going to be talked about ad nauseum for how talented they are. I have them as my 1A, 1B top ranked players in the class because I'm indecisive and I can't pick between the 2 of them, but you're getting a generational player with either of them. They're the only 2 guys I'm willing to put that generational word on in this class. Outside of that, though, we've got a lot of talented options at edge, like Lucas Van Ness from Iowa. We've got Will McDonald from Iowa State, Miles Murphy, Brian Brzee at defensive tackle, both those guys from Clemson. You've got guys like Keanu Benton as well at defensive tackle. But as we move into day 2 and day 3, there are a ton of talented options at both those position groups that could turn out to be long-term rotational pieces or starting players at a quality level. And I think a good example of how deep specifically this defensive tackle group is that there were some guys that were snubbed that were Senior Bowl participants in this defensive tackle group, particularly Carl Brooks from Bowling Green, had a pretty strong week at the Senior Bowl, but did not get that combine invite. So because there's just so many players, there's so much depth, we couldn't even get all those guys to participate in Indianapolis. I definitely think that it is at edge and defensive tackle where the most talent and depth is in this class.
Well, let's talk about one of the more unsexy positions, but a position that the Vikings will probably be looking at, and that is center. Day 1, is there anyone that could come in and be a starter, impact starter, not just a starter because they have nobody else and they suck, but a guy that could actually come in and be good as a rookie for a center.
Yeah, I have, for me, 3 to 4 guys that I think that are good enough to step in and start right away. And the ones that I'm really hung up on, and the ones that I think that are the best are Ricky Stromberg from Arkansas, who is a more veteran player. He was an East-West Shrine Game participant. I was surprised he did not get that invite to the Senior Bowl. And Jim Nagy claims that he wasn't one of the guys invited, but still, I have him graded as my highest rated center. I have him graded as somebody who can go in the back end of the first round, who's got really great flexibility and movement skills. He's got really easy power, and he just moves so well for a center. I think that he can plug in and play right away. John Michael Schmitz is another name that's been brought up, who I've graded as a second-round pick, who had a fantastic Senior Bowl performance. He's a lot more level. He's not a twitchy athlete like Stromberg, but a lot more just consistent, technically sound. You know what you're getting. I think he's closer to his ceiling compared to a guy like Stromberg, but his floor is so low that he can step in without any issues. And then there's 2 younger guys that I believe have a lot of upside, have a lot of potential, that are juniors, that are younger, and have some growing to do, but the physical tools to be really, really good. And I'm talking about Luke Whippler from Ohio State, who a little bit shorter at like 6'3", but moves really, really well, has some easy power. One guy I'm very excited about that I started watching recently, Joe Tipman from Wisconsin, who big, massive, large frame for a center, but his power profile, his movement capabilities for a guy of that size is really enticing for a team that needs a center. So I think any of those 4 guys are great options for the Minnesota Vikings. After we get past those guys, though, it does significantly thin out, admittedly, but those 4 guys I think could be instant plug-and-play players and long-term solutions at center.
Boom.
Nice. All right. Well, Joe, thanks again for hopping on. You mentioned this guy already, but one of my targets for the Vikings at 23 is Brian Bresee, the defensive tackle from Clemson. He's kind of these guys you see all over the board. You do mocks. I've seen him go as high as 6. I've seen him follow the first round. What's your grade on him? Where do you think he ultimately comes off the board?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised by why right now Brian Bresee is getting a little bit of a knock in his grade, his projection, and I think it's a little bit of overcalculation by some people. Brian Bresee is really talented. He's got an injury history, which is concerning, but he is going to be one of those defensive tackles at the combine that's going to test with some silly numbers. He is going to be a top performer amongst the group, a former top recruit just overall in his class coming out of, I think he was out of Washington, D.C., and he's just a big, big, strong kid. I think more realistically, he's going to be somewhere around that 10 to 15 range. I think it's definitely possible he slides a little bit.
23.
Yeah, I think 23 might be a little bit optimistic, but it's certainly possible. There's a possibility that you for the Vikings' sake, you got to be hoping that the teams ahead are overthinking things and over-evaluate the injury history and let them fall to a team like the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
Well, you're talking about falling. Let's talk about rising. We got the combine coming up. We could see those handsome rascals running around, and always stock just all of a sudden starts flying up when you get to receivers, all the positions. But who are a couple guys in your mind that after the combine, everyone's just be like, just they're skyrocketing?
My big one is Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, who had a really fantastic season this past year and opened our eyes as evaluators, where we were all talking about Cedric Tillman, his teammate, but Jalen Hyatt, man, that massive game he had against Alabama was just the catalyst for a great year for him. And he's a really fast, explosive receiver. I think there's a strong possibility he has the fastest 40 time amongst the receivers. And that, as we know in the past, is enough for a guy like that to be maybe the first receiver selected. The NFL is obsessed with speed. So a speedy guy like that could be the first receiver off the board somewhere after pick 15, somewhere around pick 20. I don't think there's going to be an early run on receivers. It won't happen for a little bit. But outside of that, again, I'm attracted and focusing on these speedier guys. Josh Downs from UNC and Zay Flowers from Boston College are 2 more compact receivers, but are going to run in the low 4.3s. Great athletes, are going to be really shifty, easy route runners who I think we're going to be talking about as big, big risers based on their performances at the combine.
All right, I wanted to pick your brain. Another guy linked to the Vikings, Trenton Simpson, linebacker from Clemson, a guy who kind of can do a lot of different things. Maybe doesn't quite have that clear-cut position. Is that going to hurt him not being, a traditional linebacker in a certain system, or is that versatility going to help him?
See, I'm optimistic, and me as an evaluator not associated with a team, the way I look at it is that helps him and his versatility helps him as a player at the next level. I want guys who can do multiple things at a high level. But I think for a scouting department and a general manager and a coaching staff to bank on a guy that doesn't do one thing perfectly, but does a lot of things really, really well, it can be scary. And it's kind of like the Isaiah Simmons, Kyle Hamilton circumstance of overthinking an athletic freak who is dominant in everything you ask him to do. But the thing that excites me about Trenton Simpson and why I have him graded as a top 10 pick, I think he is that good. He could slide for what you're talking about, but he is going to test crazy numbers at the NFL Combine. But on top of that, you have a fluid, instinctive, twitchy linebacker who provides value as a blitzer and a pass rusher and can hold the edge. And I have seen some great things in pass coverage as well. You want guys that can do a lot of different things. I think that this old school style of thinking for a lot of defenses and defensive coordinators hurts them. And hopefully they don't think that way and they can realize that this is a huge, huge piece that you can build your defense around.
Joe, first you tell me Bressee's going in the top 15. Now you tell me Simpson's a top 10 pick. I'm getting kind of sad here right now.
Yeah, I'm not bringing very good news for you guys. But the reality of it is I'm optimistic and I'm very high on these guys. But the thing is, these NFL front offices are going to approach things very differently than me as somebody in the media. They're going to approach it as, we got to be careful here. So Bryan Bressee's case, we got to be careful with the injury history. So we'll wait and see if maybe he's there available later on. And then for Trenton Simpson, they don't want to risk it on a guy who can't play a position and they don't know where to put him. So he might slide as well.
So with Simpson, you're saying, I mean, top 10 talent, but would you be surprised if he all of a sudden fell into round 2?
I think round 2 would be way too far for him to fall. I think that there are just so many traits for a guy like that at the very least by pick 15, everyone's going to start making that consideration if he does fall that far. But anywhere outside of round 2, I think there's just so much on the table as an athlete that it would be crazy. I would be stunned if he fell that far.
All right, well, let's talk about some steals. Who is a guy, maybe a mid-round guy that's going to go this year in the mid-rounds a couple years from now where people are going to be like, how the hell did he last that long?
Yeah, I think two guys that I keep bringing up for a question like this, somewhere on day 2. One, Cody Mock from North Dakota State. I'm a really big fan of his. And then Adio DeBoire from Northwestern. Cody Mock was a former tight end at North Dakota State, transitioned to offensive tackle, and I think he might benefit bumping inside to guard because of how aggressive his demeanor is and just how much tenacity he brings to the run game. He has a lot of cleaning up to do in terms of getting ready to play at the NFL level. And he had a really up and down week at the Senior Bowl, but I think realizing the traits, there's a lot of potential there for a player like that. So I think that Cody Mock could get selected somewhere in the 3rd round and then be a staple in an offensive line after getting more acclimated in his first year. And then Adio DeBoire from Northwestern, really a powerful, twitchy guy who played edge at Northwestern, on the shorter side at like 6'1", but is probably going to be 285 pounds at the combine, is bumping inside a defensive tackle. And as we know, when we've got guys that are really fast and can rush the passer and are twitchy and have aggressive hands and are strong, that's a pain in the butt for a lot of guards and interior offensive linemen because they can't get low enough to block guys like that. And because they're so strong and powerful, it becomes really problematic. So I think that Adio DeBoire could be a bit of a steal for a pick somewhere on day 2, maybe even early day 3 if teams overthink him.
Nice. So you mentioned this earlier, but the run on cornerbacks, like when do you really expect it to happen? You kind of mentioned mid-late first round, but I'm looking specifically. Is it going to start before pick 23?
I think around pick 23. I think around pick 20 is a good spot for that to start happening because the way I see it, this corner class, I don't have any top 15 grades on any of these corners. I think that there's a lot of good, there's a lot of traits, but there's no one who has put everything together. And the one guy who might have put everything together is Clark Phillips from Utah, but he's on the shorter side. So I think there are going to be teams that think differently on him and aren't willing to spend a top 10 pick on a guy like that. But as we get to pick 20, I think a lot of teams with that approach is we kind of see it happens a lot every year. There's always that one position group where teams are just waiting. And last year was corner as well. And it kind of happens usually around pick 20 a lot of times with a corner group like this. As soon as one guy goes, I'd be willing to bet that teams are going to trade up and try to move and go get their guy to get that corner that they're looking for.
All right. Once again, we got Joe D, draft analyst from the Bleav Network, talking draft, getting our juices pumping. We got a couple more for you. Come draft day, who's a player that right now is kind of you're seeing mocked consistently in round 1 or maybe even early that could fall that you won't be surprised about? Who could unexpectedly fall?
One that, and I don't know if it's really a consensus or it's really strange to see Dalton Kincaid mocked ahead of Michael Mayer and to see him mocked in the first round. I think Dalton Kincaid had a great career at Utah. He's a former FCS guy who transferred from San Diego. This past season, he was the most productive tight end in the country. He was so explosive, or one of the most productive tight ends in the country. He was a huge impact, and Andy Ludwig, the offensive coordinator, did everything possible to get him the football because he knew that Dalton Kincaid was a problem for opposing defenses because he's a good athlete. He's a good player in space. I don't see enough of him as a blocker to warrant him being a first-round pick. He's also an older player as well that it doesn't make a lot of sense for me for him to be the first tight end selected. I think that there's an over-calculation a ton on Michael Mayer. I think everyone sees this big hulking mass and they think that, oh, he's clunky, but the reality of it is he's 265. He's probably going to play at a lower weight, but he brings a lot of muscle, a lot of strength to the position. And I think that we need to stop mocking Dalton Kincaid as high, and we need to start mocking Michael Mayer a lot higher.
I can't confirm watching you and Ryan's show. You guys love use of Michael Mayer. It's very clear. He is your number 1 tight end.
I tweeted it after his first game at Notre Dame. I said that he was going to be 2023 tight end 1, and damn it, I'm going to stick with that. And he better be the first tight end selected. It happens. There's groupthink that happens a lot, I think, in this process where there's always one guy that just gets overthought and then everyone just starts to chime in. And I feel like it gets over muddled with the same thoughts, but we just need to stop doing that. We just need to realize that the guy's an elite talent.
Long as Mayer stays away from the Packers, not allowed. You cannot go.
I keep seeing that one, and that could be frightening if Aaron Rodgers comes back and he's a part of that offense.
Yeah, we don't want that at all. I think we're doing some rapid fire now, right? That's what we got here, Onebar.
Rapid fire. We're just going to name off a player that we've seen mocked to the Vikings, and okay. just tell us if it's a steal, reach, or just value, whatever you want to call it.
I got you.
All right, let's go. Keely Ringo, cornerback, Georgia.
Steal.
Really?
At 23, yeah, I think it's a steal.
Jordan Addison.
Value, good value for him.
Brian Bresee.
Steal.
I think I already know the answer to this one. We're going to say it anyways. Minnesota, Gopher, got to go with the center, John Michael Schmitz, 23.
In the first round, that one's a bit of a reach for me. It's a little bit of a reach. I think there's more athletic guys that are going to go, that should go ahead of him.
All right, Cam Smith.
Slight reach.
All right, final one. And this guy I've seen more and more to the Vikings round 1, Deonte Banks, Maryland.
In the end of round 1?
23.
That's a reach. That's definitely a reach. He's a day 2 pick.
Oh God, I hope he doesn't go at 23. It's horrifying.
There's so many other guys that I think are going to get selected ahead of him. I understand the hype, but there's just so many other names. We got to take into account all the other names that are going to probably go before him.
All right, Joe D, it was wonderful having you on the show,
thank
man.
You so much.
Appreciate it. This has been fantastic. Again, hit up the links down below. We'll be watching much more of you in the coming months for sure.
Heck yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.